order here. Michelle, could you please take roll?
Here.
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 Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Manager, are there any agenda amendments?
Madam Chair, no, there is not.
Thank you. All right, consent agenda. Has anything been pulled off consent? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Watson Curry, second by Councilmember Gertz. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Motion approved. Recognitions and presentations. Chris, do you want to announce the first of our two presentations for this evening?
I would, thank you. This is Cindy Gray is Executive Director for MetroCog, and some of you are on their board. In fact, several of you are on their board, and she's going to talk today, give you an update on everything they're working on, and especially those things that have to do with Moorhead. So thanks, Cindy, for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you taking a little time to learn about MetroCog and the projects that we have going on. And I have a PowerPoint presentation, so will that come up? Or here it comes. Thank you. All right. So I know some of you are kind of new on the council, so I thought I'd just go ahead and give a little background on what MetroCog is. And we have a couple of policy board members here today, so I appreciate them sitting through this as well, because they probably have heard this already. But MetroCog serves as the metropolitan planning organization for the Fargo-Moorhead metropolitan area. And that, an MPO is required by federal legislation that was passed in the 60s. And the reason being that for federal transportation planning funds and construction funds, there was a strong desire to have those funds coordinated across multiple jurisdictions, and a strong need for that. And they were seeing that that type of coordination wasn't taking place, so that was established as a rule, a regulation. And so now any jurisdiction, any metropolitan jurisdiction over 50,000 people has a metropolitan planning organization. It's required for the carrying out and spending of federal transportation dollars. And so we look at the regional transportation needs and vision. So a lot of that starts with you. It starts at your local level, and then it gets looked into in the regional context and how that all fits in with what your neighboring jurisdictions are planning and doing. And then we look from that at the specific transportation needs relative to your growth and your land use and your desires for your future. So the federal legislation specifically calls out a 3C planning process, which are the words that you see at the bottom of your screen there: cooperative, continuing, and comprehensive. So we do our best in our work with Moorhead and other jurisdictions to fulfill that requirement of all of our planning projects being cooperative, continuing, and comprehensive. The primary role of MetroCog is these core planning documents that you see listed here: the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, the Transportation Improvement Plan, which is a 4-year programming document. So right now we're working on what we call a TIP that covers 2020 through 2023, and it lays out all of the construction projects that are funded that use federal funding in the next 4 years. So we frequently have that on our agenda because, as you can imagine, we get amendments that come through and things like that. So But the 2020 to 2023 will be on the policy board agenda for the first time this next month in September. And then the Transit Development Plan is another document that we do every 5 years, and that lays out what the needs of the transit system are, what our funding situation is, and how we need to change or expand that system. And then our bicycle and pedestrian plan looks at specifically at those bike and ped needs of the metropolitan area. We also do a lot of other corridor studies and other types of transportation-related planning efforts. Things like, specifically like corridor studies or small area studies where we're just zooming in on a certain part of the community, whether it's because of growth or redevelopment or sort of a whole network of transportation issues. We look at multimodal studies, and whether that's bike and ped or transit, and we focus a lot on access management. So you probably hear your traffic engineer talking a lot about that at times with issues of driveways and intersection placements and that type of thing. And then we also look at the relationship between land use and transportation, because those two areas of decision-making are integral to each other and to the transportation system. So what else is MetroCog? We do, because of the way our organization was formed, we are a council of governments, and so we do have the ability and the charge to go beyond just transportation-related issues. And historically, that has included issues that have involved collaboration and communication, coordination between more than one jurisdiction, and things like housing. Back before aerial mosquito spraying, it included mosquito abatement. Now we aren't dealing with that anymore. It deals with Red River matters. Things like years ago, the rocking in of the Moorhead dams was a big project that was orchestrated and organized by MetroCog staff. And transit and many other matters that involve more than one jurisdiction, especially with any planning-related matters. So who's involved in MetroCog? The communities on the left, or jurisdictions on the left, are full MetroCog members, and that's requirement for federal for spending of federal transportation dollars. That includes Cass and Clay County, Moorhead, Dilworth, Fargo, West Fargo, and as of a couple of years ago, it also includes the city of Horace. Prior to that, Horace was in the right-hand column along with Barnesville and Castleton and Glendon and so forth because they were an associate member. So they didn't pay dues. They didn't have a seat at the table at our policy board meetings or our technical committee meetings. But once they became a full member, they do now. And I think that was very appropriate given their level of growth and the extent to which they're basically blending in to the metropolitan area. We have 7 staff at MetroCog. They're shown here. We have a senior transportation planner, Michael Maddox. Savannah Leach is our executive assistant, and Dan Farnsworth is transportation planner. Adam Altenberg, who you'll hear from later tonight, is the community and transportation planner. And Anna Pierce and Luke Champa are assistant planners in our office. We have several boards and committees, and these your staff play an integral role on these committees. So your planners and your engineers, sometimes I know that in addition to the workload that they have here at the city, this gets to be a lot for them, but they serve on our Transportation Technical Committee and our Bike and Ped Committee, our GIS Committee, and our Traffic Operations Committee, as well as any study review committees for specific projects that we do. So a lot of times that's Jonathan Atkins from Traffic Engineering and Christy or Robin from the Planning Department. So it just gets to be added work on their plate, but it's really, really important, and we really value their participation from a regional perspective. I want to talk a little bit about our ongoing projects because just so you can kind of get an idea of the number of projects that we have going through the pipeline at any given time. And I'm not going to say a lot about these, so if you have questions about them, let me know. Either interrupt me or ask me afterwards. Either one is fine. One of the big ones is the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and that's been going on now for over a year, and that plan will identify future transportation needs for the whole metro area. It looks at the funding picture, what the revenues are likely to be, and it prioritizes future projects. And it's required by federal law to be financially constrained, so we can't plan for a lot of projects that we don't have the projected dollars for. So sometimes we'll have illustrative projects, and then we'll seek out additional funds, like through bonding bills and things like that, but so it's important that we recognize those projects, but we do have to recognize financial constraint with that plan. Another plan that involves Moorhead is our US 10 Highway 75 study, and that's studying the future needs of those corridors because MnDOT has them slated for reconstruction within a few years, and they asked us to administer this project so that the community could weigh in on what you want to see for these corridors. And so likely once this is done, that'll extend to the east and look all the way through Dilworth and a little ways beyond. The bikeway gap analysis is another project that Moorhead is involved in. There are 16 different gaps being looked at in this study that were identified as being high priority in terms of closing them. And several of them are on the Minnesota side of the river in Moorhead, and Clay County is also a little bit involved in this. So we're looking forward to hearing some recommendations from this study. And I think we're at that point. So you should be hearing more about that in the near future. A recently completed project in Moorhead was the 12th Avenue South Corridor Study, and this project looked at the 2-mile stretch from River Drive to Main Avenue. Adam was the project manager on this project, and it looked at traffic flow, bike and pedestrian needs, the relationship between that and the neighboring properties, and I think it made some recommendations that the city was pretty favorable toward, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was adopted by all of you. And another project that we're excited about because it's finally getting some wheels under it, no pun intended, is the Heartland Trail project. And one of our staff, Dan Farnsworth, has been involved in this for a long time, and now it looks like it's getting some support for a bonding bill request. So that project, when it's completed, would connect Moorhead to the east, to all the way through Clay County and into Becker County, and would provide a really awesome bike connection all the way to the east. So Dan's been working on some of the details of where that could go and working with other jurisdictions out in Clay County, and there's a lot of support for that.
Cindy, excuse me, Madam Chair. Is that the one where the House Bonding Committee is coming in September to talk about that and the 11th Street underpass, I
believe so,
think?
yes.
So this is getting some attention at the state level. So.
Right, and there was a meeting last week, I think, perhaps one of the, okay, yeah, where, and your full legislative representation was there and in support of that. So that's an exciting thing for this region. There really are no statewide or regional trails coming into our part of the state, so it'd be fun to see. Cass County Road 18 extension, jumping all the way to the west side of the metro now, is a study that was looked at in terms of jurisdictional transfer potentially from a township road to a county road, and looked at a lot of different issues associated with this road that's getting a lot more use out in Cass County. So this is the kind of study that could be an example if there was ever a situation like this between Clay County and Moorhead, or Clay County and one of its townships where there's an issue of a transitioning roadway that's starting to get more heavily used and needs to be studied to determine who should take responsibility of it in the future. The 17th Avenue South Corridor Study is a little bit like the 12th Avenue South study in Moorhead. This one is on the Fargo side, and it just went to the Fargo City Commission again today as a brown bag. And some of the recommendations include things like mini roundabouts and on-street bike lanes. And there's a lot of discussion going on in Fargo right now about this study, but since it connects to Lindenwood Park and Gooseberry by way of the pedestrian bridge, this has the potential to be a great regional multimodal connector, and MetroCog is really supportive of this, the multimodal nature of the corridor. We're currently in the midst of a 76th Avenue corridor study, which is looking at the future needs of 76th Avenue all the way from the Red River out to beyond the Cheyenne River in West Fargo and Horace, and mainly Horace. And kind of the interesting thing about that is this is the corridor that was studied several years ago as a possible Red River crossing location. And that decision has never been fully made or executed, but it's still one of the considerations that's in the back of everybody's mind, and sometimes the forefront of everyone's mind when talking about this corridor. Even though the Minnesota side is, growing at a different pace to the south in terms of Moorhead's growth. Recently, MetroCog completed, with the help of a consultant, a West Fargo parking and access study, and this was spearheaded mostly by Fargo and West Fargo, but I think the recommendations that came out of it are really effective or applicable to all the jurisdictions in the metropolitan area. The study found that we tend to require more parking than is utilized in many of our developments, and it also looked at the relationship between development and our different types of corridors. Adam's going to talk about the Metro Food Plan update, so I'm going to skip over that. The MatBus organizational review is a study that several of your staff are involved in, including the city manager. And this is looking at the potential for changing the organization of MatBus and whether there's a good reason to do that. And it's all being done in light of the fact that after the 2020 census, the metro area will officially be over 200,000 in population. And at that point, the funding and the way we can use federal funding for the operation of transit will change if the rules stay like they are right now. So there are other organizational approaches that could generate their own funding through different types of taxes or other means. So we're just studying all of those aspects of the organization and what will be best for the future. Another project we're completing at the moment and kind of in the middle of is the Horace Comprehensive and Transportation Plan. The FM Diversion Rec Plan is a project that's just being kicked off, and north is to the left on this picture in case you're wondering why it looks so funny. But the blue line is the Red River, and the green line is the alignment of the embankment and diversion channel. And there's going to be, you'll start hearing more and more about this over the next few months, but the purpose of the project is to really look at what kinds of recreational opportunities are desired and available along the top of the diversion channel, and what does the public want, what would the public like to see, how could that be used to potentially tie into a Heartland Trail type of a facility, how can we make this a regional asset in terms of open space and recreation. And the Northwest Metro Transportation Plan is one that is in the early stages, but a lot of work has actually been done on this, and it looks at the areas where West Fargo and Fargo come together on the northwest side, up on the 19th Avenue area, County Road 20, west of the airport, west of I-29 in that area. And really looking at future potential for development in that area, since so much of it comes out of the floodplain with the diversion, and then how does that relate back to the transportation needs of that part of the community? Because it's really never been studied in any great detail up to this point, because no one really ever thought much about it because it's so prone to flooding and that kind of thing. So the Fargo Safe Routes to School project is one that is nearing completion. It should be complete by the end of the year. There are over 30 schools being studied as part of that, both public and private, and recommendations are being made for pedestrian improvements that should make pedestrians safer on their way to and from school. And then the West Fargo 9th Street study is another one that we're looking at, north and south of Main Avenue. MetroCog recently completed a Castleton comprehensive plan, so sometimes for these smaller communities in our periphery of our metropolitan area, we'll take on these projects ourselves internally, which is what happened with this Castleton plan, and that was recently completed and adopted. We're currently working on the Holly zoning ordinance update, and one of our projects that's slated for next year is Moorhead 17th Street North study. And as most of you, I think, know, that's a huge, wide street. And there may be potential there to utilize that curb-to-curb space or the right-of-way in a way that would make that more of an asset to the community and calm the traffic and that type of thing. So I don't have any predisposed ideas about what that might be, and we look forward to studying that with the city. In 2020, we also have a transit development plan that's in our scope of work, in our budget, and a Veterans Boulevard southerly extension feasibility study south of 52nd Avenue. So those are projects coming up next year. And with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you, Cindy, for that history of the council of, or the MetroCog and how that began and all of that information. That was helpful, as well as the project updates that you have going on. Are there any questions or comments from council? Chuck, Councilmember Hendrickson, excuse me.
Thank you. Cindy, first of all, great job with the MetroCog. It's been a great year. I'm sit on the board in the executive committee board. Do you have any highlights of the 12th Avenue South? I know it's a pretty big study. Where is it at right now? Is it completed?
It is completed, and I think the highlights are some of the recommendations that were made, and Adam can elaborate on this probably better than I can, but some of the traffic operations changes that were recommended for the intersection of 8th Street and 12th Avenue, which will probably be implemented with, I'm not sure if they're going to be implemented with the 12th Avenue, some work on 12th Avenue, or with the work on Highway 75 that's coming up. But other recommendations, I think, had to do with the way the corridor is used for biking, with bike lanes, and trying to maintain as many trees along the corridor as possible, but still utilizing that pavement width in a way that accommodates more modes. So did I capture that? Okay. Okay.
And one more question here. Where are you at with it? I know you've had to remodel your old place, so where are you at with that right now?
We are about a month away from moving back in. So the project is nearing completion. There's still tools and work going on all over the place, but what will ultimately hold us up is furniture. So we have furniture being installed the week of September 16th, our furnishings and office furniture and meeting room. And so we're going to be moving in sometime either without furniture beginning of September, end of August, or we'll stay where we're at and move in middle of September.
Thank you, and thanks to your staff and all that you do, so thank you very much.
Thanks.
Councilmember Gertz?
Just remember, there's no gain without pain, right? For your new office, so if you need a lawn chair, I could get you a lawn chair.
Yeah, thank you.
Fill in for a month or so.
Might need that card table, might be bringing my card table in from home, yeah.
I do want to echo Chuck's comments that appreciate your leadership with MetroCog, and you've done a great job there, and it's been fun serving on the board and seeing you develop over the last year and a half or so. So thank you.
Thank you, and Madam Chair, may I add that Councilmember Gertz was very helpful to me in kind of getting the remodeling process underway, because that's not something I've had to lead before, so I was appreciative of his guidance and wisdom in that, and we'll definitely miss you on the policy board, so.
Councilmember Watson Curry?
Thank you. Cindy, great presentation. There's such a wealth of information amongst your staff. I always appreciate all the input they do as far as collecting at standalone events or information at different community-based events as well. So I was just curious, you've got your website on the screen, which has also been remodeled, I believe, which looks great. I know you guys have a pretty strong social media presence and do a number of surveys online if people can't make it into events. What's the best way for folks to get connected? I have one follow-up question with that, too.
Well, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with the, we have so many public meetings for all of our projects. I mean, it's interesting, any given week, we can be out in 2 or 3 different places with public input meetings, online surveys. We're trying to do a better job, I guess, a more thorough job of using Facebook and mass emails and our website to get the word out, your social media as well. So I'm always asking, okay, did we ask, we got it on our Facebook page, but did we ask Moorhead to put it out on their Facebook page too? And, so we can just try to connect more in all those multiple different ways. But I think it's really important for people to watch for those online surveys, contact any one of us. All of the project web pages or pages on our website have a contact information for the project manager. So if people learn about a project and they're just not sure where it's at right now, they can go on the website and find out who the project manager is, send an email or give a call, and find out where they can plug in again. But just watch for, we have an event calendar with all of our public meetings on it, and online survey links and that kind of thing.
Awesome, thank you. I just want to follow up, the boards and commissions obviously have elected officials on them as well, but you have a number where you pull in from the community. Is there, I'm assuming that's also on the website, do you guys kind of advertise when you have an at-large opening, or is there a place where somebody could submit an application that's ongoing? I wasn't 100% sure in the process. Like the Bike and Pedestrian Committee occasionally will have spots open up or things like that too. So it's a great way for a citizen to get involved in some of these long-term planning processes.
That's a good question, and I don't know that I'm going to be able to answer it because I don't know that we've filled one of those positions since I've been at MetroCog. Okay. But I think that the best approach there is to kind of, for one thing, keep a list of people who have expressed interest in the past, and then use our email, our large email capability, and sometimes we also can put that in the newspaper. Adam might know in the past what we've done. Have we advertised for those in the newspaper in the past? Yeah.
I'm unsure as well.
Okay. Yeah, I know,
Sorry,
like many of you with your planning commissions and that kind of thing, I think we, we can probably use things like an ad in the paper to advertise for those too. But the fact of the matter is, I think those things are seen less and less as we get more towards, towards the digital. Mm-hmm. So.
Keep up the great work. Thanks so much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Councilmember Carlson?
Thank you. Nice to meet you. I'm one of the newer council members, and the PowerPoint presentation you gave was very informative, as I don't know a whole lot about MetroCog. I am curious how you guys decide what projects you're going to study. You know, so like the 17th Street study in Moorhead, I know that there's a couple blocks between 12th Avenue and 20th, and Main Avenue, I should say, 20th Street and Main Avenue in Ward 2 in Moorhead. I'm just curious, how do you guys determine which parts of each city you're going to study?
Typically, we get suggestions from your staff, your planning and engineering staff, or others at any, at all the jurisdictions that are members of MetroCog. Sometimes those suggestions come from the public or from other, let's say we're studying 11th Street, and, the public says, well, what about 17th Street, or what about 14th Street, or something like that. And then we sort of start to keep that in a list. We've started a kind of a large future needs list as far as transportation planning projects go. But then we bring those forward to the policy board and get their concurrence. And that's typically the way. If there's been an issue of some kind, or if a community knows that they have a corridor that's up for reconstruction, that's typically when they'll ask for a corridor to be studied or for a certain area to be looked at.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll thank you again, Cindy, for being here. That information was very helpful.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Next on the agenda is another presentation by MetroCog. Chris, would you like to introduce our next presenter?
Actually, Madam Chair, I think Sarah might have a few things to say about this. Sarah's been involved with this initiative. It's been a long time coming, getting on the agenda. Adam is also from MetroCog, so I'm going to turn it, if that's okay, over to Sarah to introduce.
Certainly.
Okay.
Councilmember Watson-Curie.
Well, I'm excited to welcome Adam Altenberg here from FM MetroCog, and I had the pleasure of serving on the the Cass Clay Food Systems. Nope, that's not correct.
Cass
The
Clay Food Commission.
Yes, Cass Clay Food Commission. My apologies. And so I've been wanting to bring forth this information. There's a great deal of study and information on a broad number of topics, and they've recently been working to update the Metro-wide food plan. So I think it's important for us to receive that information, and also all the jurisdictions are going to be receiving this info. So we are the first to kick it off, which I feel is pretty special. So Adam, take it over. Here you go.
Well, thank you. Council members, thank you again for having me here tonight. Again, my name is Adam Altenberg, and I'd like to spend just a couple minutes talking about the Metro Food Plan. This is an update to a previous plan that we completed in 2013, and it's being completed through MetroCog with funding through a grant by the North Dakota Department of Health, which funds this and other activities of the Cass Clay Food Partners to bring about greater awareness to food issues impacting the community. So the purpose of this plan, there's really three main points. First of which is to help local governments and community members understand why food systems planning is important. And by that, we mean areas that affect food, health, nutrition, and other economic and environmental contexts. This plan also identifies food production and food security challenges and opportunities in the area, such as hunger, food access, urban agriculture, and cultural food programs, among others, as well as providing strategic recommendations to guide development of a local and regional food system by both local governments and the Cass Clay Food Partners. So like I said, the previous plan was completed in 2013 and provided the first framework for understanding the local food system. This plan put a lot of focus on different metrics for understanding community well-being, which include health indicators, nutrition programs, food infrastructure, and land use. And with that, with its strong emphasis on public health, this plan was adopted by the two main entities responsible for public health on both sides of the river, which includes the city of Fargo and Clay County, as well as Fargo Cass Public Health. So at the beginning of this plan, we held a number of public pop-up events to hear what issues were important to the community's food systems over the coming years. With comment cards that we had at these events, we received 151 unique responses. And as you can see from this chart here, the main issue people spoke broadly about was food access. Potentially looking at year-long farmers markets, more school and community gardens, and more ethnic and cultural food sources, among other issues. People also had a lot of questions about what exactly we mean when we talk about food systems. So awareness and education was also an important theme, but also better nutrition and food preparation education. We saw that among the comments as well. Food waste came in at number 3, potentially strengthening existing composting programs in the area. As well as ways of working with restaurants and larger companies and institutions to address food waste in those places. And the last one that I'll touch on tonight is urban agriculture. That was the 4th most popular issue that came up, which includes a broad number of ways that community members could potentially grow and produce their own food. Oops. Thank you. So, we're still working on a draft of this plan, but with regard to some of the strategic recommendations we're working on, they fall under these 5 broad categories, broad goals of creating an inclusive, well-connected food system, providing equitable access to safe, nutritious, affordable, and culturally appropriate food, opportunities to combat chronic diseases, including obesity and diabetes, promoting food, skills, education, and a final goal to better promote ecological stewardship and health. And these are just a couple of sample objectives that we've developed so far, of the roughly 20 to 25 that we're working on. The first one really shows how some of these objectives could tie in with other transportation issues by ensuring that there are adequate connections to the grocery store and other food access points in the community. Second example speaks to the importance of working with community partners, such as the Great Plains Food Bank and other food assistance providers, to better ensure that we as a community are assisting people that are in need. So, next steps. We're hoping to discuss a draft at our next Food Commission in September. For those unfamiliar with the Cass Clay Food Commission, this is a group made up of 12 elected and appointed officials from throughout the FM area that has been discussing and trying to bring about awareness to these and other issues since 2015. After that, we would like to bring any draft that we develop to our local planning partners, so the local planning departments with both the cities and counties, just to ensure that we have buy-in from them and to get their input on some of the objectives that we do bring forth as part of this plan. And then finally, after that, we are hoping that all the different local governments would consider adopting this plan as a guiding document for comprehensive plans or other land development policies or actions that cities or counties would be considering in the future. So that's just a very brief update on where we're at with the Metro Food Plan. I'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you, Adam. I was able to serve on this commission for a number of years and found it very dynamic, very ever-changing. I think the most interesting part of serving on this commission was to see the creation of all those blueprints that we worked on. And I hope they still exist and can be disseminated to different municipal governments, because what they did is gave municipal governments a document that they could pass as a resolution in terms of different types of urban farming, such as beekeeping, composting, I can't remember how many were created.
Yeah, we have over a dozen of these blueprints, and we also have a number of other smaller policy briefs that we have developed.
I sure appreciated my time on that commission, and I would really like to see you guys over here more often and giving us more updates on those blueprints and those drafts, and maybe we can take a relook at some of those and see what our council would like to do with them. Thanks for being here. Are there any other questions or comments? Councilmember White?
Thanks, Madam Chair. So, Anne, thank you so much for the presentation, and I think this is such important work. I think that there's growing awareness about issues of food insecurity, but still there's so much more that we could do. I wanted to ask a little bit about how you gathered your data, and I really appreciated in your goals, the second one, you have provide equitable access to safe, nutritious, affordable, and culturally appropriate food. So when you did your data gathering, you listed 5 different pop-ups. So you did Theater B, Prairie Roots, Streets Alive, Red River Market, and Cucumber Fest. Was there any other way, did you reach out? What I'm wondering is, did you do things to make sure that you included people who are more directly affected by food insecurity? So did you talk to people at food pantries, or expand in terms of socioeconomic status to make sure you got voices across the spectrum? Or in terms of cultural diversity, did you go to halal markets or other places that, international markets or anything like that to make sure that, because the places you listed are pretty narrow in terms of socioeconomic status and cultural diversity?
Thank you for the question. At the beginning of this project, we were hoping to do more of these pop-up events. Unfortunately, it was really a matter of staff timing to attend all of these events. So we tried to hit places that we knew we would find the most people that would probably be interested or aware of these issues. But no, that's.
Is there ways to include that? Because it seems like if you're looking at issues of food insecurity, most of the folks that are the patrons of the places you listed are not the ones that are directly impacted. I know I love all of those places. I go to all of those places, but food insecurity, I'm very fortunate that's not something that I experience. But would there be a way of making sure that those voices are included, that people who are more directly impacted?
Well, actually, I did just remember. We did have these comment cards at the Great Plains Food Bank. So there was an opportunity for people to fill those cards out and then send them to us from there. But that is a good question. We're still working on a draft, so maybe at our next food commission meeting, if that's something that we want to discuss, if there's a need to reach out to more members of the community to get their input on this plan, we can do that.
I think that could add a lot, yeah. And along the same lines for culturally appropriate food, like going to, as I said, we have a new halal market in Moorhead. There's ones in Fargo. We have lots of different ethnic markets. Being able to get some input from folks that could really, provide an added perspective and expand the voices that you have would be great. Thanks.
Well, thank you.
Councilmember Watson-Curry?
Thank you. Just to follow up to that comment too, there is representation on the commission itself as far as with the Great Plains Food Bank. And then if you look at a number of the blueprints too, some of them are involving like newer stores, like a healthy corner store initiative. So I feel like through the study of some of the specific blueprints, there has been that highlighted engagement as well. So it could maybe be a little bit more robust, but I think there are those voices, or at least those advocates are at the table, which is really great. I just wanted to uplift that all of the blueprints that are there. So there's been just a great deal of study and input and evaluating potential policies for things too. So it's really really a robust study on things. So I hope we are able to bring forward some of these things. I've also, in my time on the council, we've seen some of the things evolve with our own land use from a state perspective, but also as far as some of our public works practices. So example I would give would be some of the properties that were previously mowing. Now we're working with Audubon Society to plant native plants and things like that to reduce our input and some of our labor costs too. So I think that there's a lot of good energy and opportunities for educations around these topics. So I'm really excited to bring some of them forward. I feel like in the wintertime, people are always thinking about some of these particularly gardening initiatives, and also they kind of are buzzworthy during the harvest season too. So I feel like there's been a lot of energy, people talking about community gardening or some of those gleaning practices or other backyard extenders. It's on the minds of people while they're sneaking zucchinis into each other's front steps. So I just think we're pretty primed to look at some of the blueprints, and there's a great deal of research on both sides of the initiative, and give examples on different sized communities as well. So if you want to talk, Adam, a little bit about where folks can find those. I know the website and where the blueprints have been nested have bounced around a little bit, so maybe you can educate us on that.
Sure. All of the blueprints and policy briefs can be found at the Cass Clay Food Partners website. That's housed under the City of Fargo's website through Fargo Cass Public Health. With regard to this project, we do have a project page on MetroCog's website as well, which has my contact information for people that want more information about this project. So,
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none. Thanks again, Adam, for being here. Hopefully we'll see you again soon.
great, thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 6. We have 2 sets of minutes. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Can I get a second? Okay, that was moved by Councilmember Carlson, seconded by Councilmember Watson Curry. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Next item is item number 7, where we have 15 minutes reserved for citizens addressing the council. If there's anybody in the audience that would like to address the council on an issue that is not on the agenda, this is the time to do that. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak to the council on an item not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item number, where does that put us at? Item number 9, our engineering department. Resolution to approve 34th Street Improvement Agreement with the City of Dilworth. Hello, Mr. Zimmerman.
Good evening.
So you can tell us about this
Sure will.
resolution.
And actually very happy to do this. Just as a little bit of background, back in the mid-2000s, the city constructed 34th Street North from approximately 4th Avenue to 28th Avenue North as one segment of that longer corridor. Although the city borders both Moorhead and the street borders both Moorhead and Dilworth, the city of Moorhead secured the funding for the project, acquired the right-of-way, and constructed it. And as a result, the street is entirely under City of Moorhead jurisdiction. The project was financed using a combination of federal and municipal state aid funds. The municipal state aid funds were used as interim financing for the local share of the project and was allocated, that local share was allocated to properties both east and west of 34th Street North. For those properties either within Moorhead or anticipated to be annexed into the city of Moorhead, those costs will be or have been recovered through special assessments as development has taken place. However, we don't have authority to levy special assessments for properties within Dilworth. So therefore, we haven't had a mechanism, an efficient mechanism, I should say, to recover the costs that were allocated to the east side of 34th Street North. You may recall, some of you may recall, that in the past, we have negotiated access agreements with private property developers to recover some of those costs. That occurred in 2007 when Walmart was constructed, and again in 2017 when Aldi was constructed. Subsequent to the Aldi agreement, the City Council recognized that there were challenges and limitations to negotiating those private developer agreements with property inside of the city of Dilworth. So the council directed the city manager to engage the Dilworth City Administrator to explore the potential to develop an improvement agreement. Councilmember Gertz was designated to participate in that effort. So the agreement that is the result of that effort is before you. Just a couple of probably the highlights. In paragraph 4, there are procedures for street improvements, which include cost sharing and financing for future improvements. It also includes for payment by the city of Dilworth for the remaining portion of the local costs for the segment south of 15th Avenue North, which is a total of about $235,000, which will be repaid by the city of Dilworth over the next 10 years. The agreement also includes a requirement to meet and discuss potential reimbursement for the segment north of 15th Avenue North at such time as development within Dilworth might occur in that area. Paragraph 5 covers operation and maintenance in terms of certain responsibilities that will be performed by each city, as well as activities that will be cost shared. And there are various other paragraphs covering things like sidewalks, access points, and drainage. So this has been a long effort, but there are many benefits that result from this. It assures that the city of Moorhead recovers some of those local costs that have been deferred for a number of years, and it puts a definite time frame on the cost recovery for a portion of that. Defines the operations and maintenance activities going forward so that those costs are shared equally between the two cities, and clearly defines how we're going to finance future improvements. So that's a very brief summary of the agreement, and I would defer to Councilmember Gertz or the city manager for any further comments.
Thank you, Dr. Zimmerman. Are there any questions or comments? Councilmember Gertz?
It was a lot of meetings and a lot of legal work, and certainly want to thank Bob and John Shockley for all the work that they put in to this agreement. I think it's a great agreement for the city of Moorhead. They get reimbursed for half the cost that they've put into it. It's over time, but at least there's some reimbursement, and now there's a formal agreement on anything from snow removal to repairs and maintenance, and it's a good thing all around. And hats off to Julie Nash, City Commissioner for Dilworth, and Peyton Mastra for the City Administrator over there for coming along and listening to our proposals and seeing that it was the right thing to do for both communities. And it's just an example of how two communities can work together for common good for both citizens. So thanks, Bob and John and Chris, for your efforts on putting that together.
Well, I would ditto that, Councilmember Gertz's remarks. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Mr. Shockley, Ms. Volkers, and Steve, thank you too for being a part of that agreement. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the resolution to approve the 34th Street Improvement Agreement with the City of Dilworth?
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Gertz, seconded by Councilmember Hendrickson. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thanks again. All right, that takes us then, if I am seeing things correctly, item number 20. Chris, I will let you, or I'm sorry, Madam City Manager, I will let you introduce this topic.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Lisa Bodie is here, our Governmental Relations Director, and she's got some good news. This is a good news story and something kind of exciting in regards to low-income housing for an opportunity for Moorhead. So, Lisa.
I've been waiting to brief you on this project since I was trying to think, probably before I had an Outlook calendar, because I was involved with the original construction of this project, and I knew about this right of first refusal, and I've been tracking it ever since. And so this is kind of like a full circle moment for me. So I'm really enthusiastic about it. So there is a development in North Moorhead called Maple Court Townhomes. It's 34 units of affordable rental housing, and it was developed by South Hill Group, which is Steve Stoner and Jim Toomey. They've done a lot of this work in North Dakota, and they did this project in Moorhead, and it's a beautiful development. It took a lot to get it cited and approved. The council at that time had, there was a lot of neighborhood pressure not to approve it. And I think that the council at the time did a great job at working through the neighborhood concerns. And with the development standards of Minnesota housing and a very patient developer, we got the job done. It has a wonderful playground on site. It has attached garages and just very sound construction, so it was well developed. We had some community development block grant funds in the project at the time, and we also used some tax forfeit land as part of the development as they were assembling land. So we had involvement in a few different ways. I think we also helped with putting a road in, and some of those costs were recovered through tax increment finance and others through CDBG contributions. But as part of this, these projects are very competitive throughout the state of Minnesota, and the scoring criteria at that time had a provision that the developer would get extra points if they offered a right of first refusal on at least 50% of the units at the end of the 15-year compliance period. Well, that period was up in 2018, I believe, and we received notice from the developer that they were exercising or offering the right of first refusal, and we have 3 years and 3.5 months to exercise our right. Although, if they were in a hurry and they had another offer, they could give us 90 days. But we've been working very cooperatively through this project. They know there's a lot of due diligence to do. They know we had a little staff turnover in the CDBG administrator position. And so while I'm taking all of the glory here tonight, Joshua Huffman has been working diligently with Minnesota Housing and on the details of this project. And so, and Don Bacon is here. So we have right of first refusal on 17 of the units, and the original developer is talking with Moorhead Public Housing Agency about buying the other 17 units, which could be very nice for us. So so that's a little bit of background. The program was developed under the tax credit program. There are 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units at the property. If we are going to, so the purpose for acquiring the property would not just be so that we could run it as is. It would be for the purpose of providing home ownership to existing tenants or people who would become tenants. It's a little more complicated than we thought of years ago. You do have to be a resident of the property for a certain number of months. I think it's 3 months before you could buy your unit. So Don Bacon and I, one winter day, did tour the units and talked to some of the tenants about whether they might be interested in home ownership. And there was interest. So we are now at the point where we're doing some feasibility work on the property. Minnesota Housing has a guide for eventual tenant ownership, and we are working through that guide to determine feasibility on the financing. Right now, the property is cash flowing just fine, so the developer's not putting any subsidy into it. We need to do a capital needs assessment, which is one of the things I want your your action on tonight. And they would require us to repair anything that has, or have a plan for anything that has less than a 20-year life, so that we know when we would be converting it to home ownership that it would be, in good condition. And then a financial analysis, because we would, the city gets right of first refusal to buy the property for the remaining debt on the property, which 15 years have already been paid. And we can sell it at a price that is affordable to those tenants. And then if there is a difference, we can capture that resource and use it for other affordable housing or projects in the community. So it's intriguing in the fact that it can provide that home ownership to someone who might not otherwise ever be able to achieve home ownership. It provides us an opportunity to do more. And I'm really excited about it. It would be daunting if it wasn't to be a partnership with Moorhead Public Housing Agency or another partner, because this is going to happen over time. Then all the units aren't going to convert at once. There might be some that are not in a position to own some existing tenants that are not in a position or to own their own home, or they may have plans to move in a year. They may not want to permanently live at where they're living. So, there's going to be a variety of circumstances, so it would happen gradually. So having Moorhead Public Housing on board, we could work with them to have a management contract for our 17 units. As units would sell, our administrative fee, the management fee would go as almost like a condo association fee for the new buyers, and our fee would be reduced. So we have a lot of details to work through, but before we can give you a good recommendation, we need to get the background to make a good decision. We need a capital needs assessment. We have a very rough estimate that it will cost about $20,000. We are suggesting that this could come from the CDBG fund to the extent our administrative allowance is sufficient. We're limited to 20% on an administrative activity. And so we would like to pay for as much of it as we can with our resources, including those units for Moorhead Public Housing Agency, because we do projects in partnership with them frequently. And then would ask them to pay if there is something that goes above our administrative allowance. So that's probably more detail than you want, but I am available for questions and sharing my enthusiasm for at least the investigation at this point. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Thanks for that history and then information. It is a very exciting project. I remember being at the public housing meeting when it was first discussed, and you could feel the excitement in the air. Are there any other questions or comments, Councilmember White?
Yes. First, thank you so much for bringing this forward and for the work that you've done on it. And we've talked a lot about access to affordable housing and increasing home ownership, and so it was just really great to see this project, and I'm excited to see it. And you kind of answered one of my questions, and I just wanted to make sure that I was clear on it. So if, say we have somebody who currently lives in one of the 17 units that we purchased, so if they didn't want to buy, they don't have to leave, they could stay there indefinitely, or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We would we would never displace someone from their home.
Okay.
So they could live there absolutely forever if that's what they wanted to.
Great. And then once they did eventually, if they left, then would that immediately go on the market? So then it wouldn't be eligible to be rented, it would only be?
No, not during the 15-year compliance period.
okay.
That's some of the investigation that Joshua has done. We would, and Joshua, you need to correct me if I'm mistaken here, but we can only sell to someone who's a tenant. So
that's right, they have to
we
live
could
there for a
either,
while.
so
Okay.
someone that is interested, Dawn could keep a list of who might be interested from the other units, move someone in, or they could move any renter in, and with the goal of having them eventually purchase their home. But just to comply with the federal rules relating to the primary funding source, we would have to have them be a tenant first.
Great.
So it adds a complication to it, and again, if it wasn't for a partnership, I think we might have to recommend passing on it, just because it would be too complicated.
Other questions or comments? Councilmember Carlson.
Thank you. How long do you have to live at the rental? Like if somebody moved out and somebody then comes back in to rent it, or a different person comes in to rent and they're interested in home ownership, how long would they need to live in the rental?
I want to make sure I get the detail right. 90? I think so. 90 days.
Okay.
I
90
mean,
days.
we will get you a definitive answer. I just don't have that off the top of my head. We'll get into those technical details as we go.
Yeah, I mean, I was just curious because if
Yeah.
it's, you have to live there for 3 years.
No,
or,
no,
you
no,
know,
no.
if, you
It
know,
was,
if
it's a matter of months, not years.
Okay. And then when you went out this winter to do kind of a mini survey or whatever you want to call it, of the people living there now who were interested in possible home ownership, could you give us a guesstimate of about how many
We
people
did not,
responded?
we were there to look at some sample units, so it was not, we have not done a resident survey. One advantage that we do have is Joshua's former career was homebuyer educator. And so I could see us having meetings with the existing tenants there, perhaps other public housing agency tenants, and doing some real homebuyer education with that group too. I think we have a great resource in Joshua for that.
And then my last question was, I didn't quite catch exactly what you were saying when you said that the purchase price would be the remaining debt currently owed on the place.
The purchase price to the city of Moorhead, right?
Okay. And then when we would turn around to sell them, is that at the fair market value, or what would we sell?
We need to sell them at a rate that is affordable to the tenants that are living there. So 30% of their income towards a mortgage. So we'll have to work into that based on interest rates, mortgage, down payment assistance. And it's possible, what we would like to do, Councilmember Carlson, too, is work into perhaps if there is a 90-day period for which they have to rent, maybe we can work something out where some of that rent can go toward a down payment on the property too. We'll look at some creative financing that makes it, a good deal for people to get into it too. So I think we can do it. I think there's some education and some financing resources that we can investigate further. But first we have to know if we're, all of these things are elements of the feasibility analysis.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Councilmember Duran. First off, good work since 2002. Is that what I was reading? It's been about 17 years, so a long time coming. It's the American dream to own a home, so I'm glad we're providing this service. I have one question. So you're talking about a mortgage. Would that be through like a private bank, or where?
If they, we would look to use other resources of Minnesota Housing, and so, but they could also go to any lender of their choice too. We would put together some financing packages that would take advantage of any down payment assistance that the state may have to offer, any of those tools. I've already started having some casual conversations with people at the state about some of their special programs that would be special applications, but it could be through anyone, a lender of their choice as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Gertz.
But you're not advocating that the city of Moorhead finance the sales for the individual homes, are you?
No, we would need financing to acquire the property, and then would pay that off. But no, we wouldn't hold their mortgages.
Yeah, I understand that, to purchase it, but I just caution against the city acting as a bank?
We're not in a position, we're just not set up to do that
Yep.
either. So we would not consider that. But we would look to, through, there are participating lenders with Minnesota Housing. There's the startup and step-up programs that offer some really good down payment assistance and below mortgage interest financing. But some of our local banks that don't participate in that program might also have some programs that they want to make available to individuals. So yeah, everybody would have their own financing.
Sure. And then just to make it clear that what you're asking for is approval to get pricing for capital needs assessment at this point, not the purchase of the property.
Correct. We need to bring you a more comprehensive recommendation that has a physical capital element to it, a financing element, and then a market element.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Councilmember Dahlquist.
Thank you. And maybe Don can help on this. When we did the physical needs assessment for the other public housing, I seem to remember we talked something about some of the people, some of the city employees can actually do some of the assessments, inspections and stuff for the property. Did that ever happen, or did it? Do you know if it was all through FOSS?
Yeah, Councilmember Delquist is a liaison on our board with Moorhead Public Housing, and we're actually undergoing a physical needs assessment for our public housing properties right now, so kind of in a parallel discussion. But no, we do not have any city staff conducting that needs assessment. We decided to contract with a engineering company to assist us with that.
I'm just wondering if, being that it would be the city that would be involved, is that a possibility? I don't know that it would
We
save
don't
us
really
much,
have the
but-
credentials.
Okay.
We don't have a staff person. I mean, we have our building inspectors and we have civil engineers, but this would probably be more of an architecture firm that would do this. So we have specifications that we've developed based on what Minnesota Housing requires. And I would think that we would need something third-party if we're going to use it for financing purposes, too.
Questions, comments? Seeing none, thank you, Lisa, for all that information. Thank you, Don, for your cooperation and collaboration, and thank you, Josh, for all of your work behind the scenes. We need a motion.
I move to approve.
Okay, moved by Councilmember White, seconded by Councilmember Dahlquist. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. All right, we are to item number 25, a resolution to authorize an agreement with Lockridge Grindle Nowen, PLLP, for legislative advocacy on the federal build grant for our 11th Street underpass project. Chris?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you recall, the council asked me, last year and this year, to look at options for lobbying for the federal build grant for our 11th Street underpass. The request is for, I think the max is $25 million. Last year, we did apply for the build grant without any lobbying. We have very good relationships with our federal legislators. However, we did not win that build grant. We came in very close, though. So we had 2 debriefs with the federal government on this. And they told us kind of where to improve our application and kind of where we were falling down. And we've really made great strides in that regard. We feel pretty good about this. There's a lot of competition for the build grant, but if we were going to get it, now's probably the year that we are going to come the closest to it. So you asked me to check on federal lobbying firms to help with that. And while we have our own Congress people, covered, there are other people on the committees that we don't have direct access to. We have met with the firm, as you can see on your agenda, Lockridge Grindle. I've met with several of their lobbyists. One is a former mayor of St. Paul. that does work for them. And we did some reference checking on them. And they do have access, we believe, to other areas that we don't have access to. And plus, it's very expensive for us to fly to DC to do lobbying. So they offered a contract at $5,000 a month for 6 months. And we ended up saying, well, we only need it for 3 months because there's a period in the fall where we can't lobby anymore. It's like a blackout period. We apply, we lobby, and then there's a period that you just cannot do that anymore, and while they're discussing it behind the scenes. So if we want to go that route, I really don't have any huge opinion about it. If we're going to do it, now's the year, is my opinion. They will do it for $6,000 a month for 3 months. So that is what's before you with the proposal to approve that. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Madam City Manager. Any questions? Councilmember White?
My only thought when I saw it is not so much a question, but just a suggestion. If we do this, that we should really pull out all the stops and make the most of this. And I appreciated that in the proposal, they talked about the work that we've already done to build strong relations with our elected officials on this side, and then they made a list of some other elected officials. And the one thing I thought was that this might be a place where we could partner with the chamber, maybe Greater Fargo-Moorhead Economic Development Corporation, to help make those connections on the North Dakota side with their federal elected officials, because clearly this is a project that benefits the entire metro area. So it's not just something that Moorhead benefits from. And so I just had that as a suggestion, if we do go down this road, is that we all should really, all hands on deck, make the most of it and really work at working with elected officials on both sides of the river and other places to, make a strong case and bring in as many partners in our area that can help make that case as possible, so that we can be effective.
It's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember White. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember Watson Curry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Item 26, consider the first reading of ordinance 2019-07, create and enact section 13.09 of the Charter of the City of Moorhead relating to chamber membership and private organization memberships. Now, I understand that we need an entire council to vote on this, so we have discussed it. Are we still going to discuss it again, or?
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. So the council really has a couple options tonight. It could just simply table the matter since all council members aren't present to vote on it. The second option would be to table it, to send it back to the Charter Commission. There was some discussion about amending the language. So that would be the other option. So you really have two options in front of you. You really can't have a first reading because you don't have all the council members present. And as set forth in the council communications, it does require a unanimous vote of all council members, and the mayor has to approve also.
So my question is, if we table until the next meeting, Councilmember Gertz will have left us by then. Is that going to be a problem, or is his seat considered open, not counted, or?
Once the seat is, it's a great question. Once the seat is vacant, it is not counted towards the voting requirements. So after Councilmember Paulson and Councilmember Gertz have left the council, for example, there'll be 6 council members voting. So in order to have a two-thirds vote or a 3/4 vote on most issues, you'll need 5 of the 6 council members for a short period of time.
Okay. And you also said that the mayor needs to also approve, so, okay. So there's really nothing that we can do other than table. Councilmember Gertz?
Before we table the issue, I would like to speak in favor of this, this point. I think that it's important for the city to have the option, as the individual councils see fit, to be members of the chamber. I think there's lots of opportunities to partnership with them, and on numerous topics that affect our citizens. So I think that it's a good thing to be involved in the chamber. But again, this is to allow the council to make that decision, not, saying, yeah, we want to. It's just you're voting to be allowed for this elected body to make that decision for itself.
And I would also add that it doesn't pertain to just the chamber. As the way the language is stated, it would pertain to other organizations as well. So the chamber being one of, many potential different organizations that the city could choose to be a member of. So, all right. Does anybody want to make the motion to table?
I'll move to table.
Doesn't take a second, correct?
No, you do need a second to table. It's just non-debatable, so.
Okay, thank you. Motioned by Councilmember White, seconded by Councilmember Watson Curry.
Well, you should, without a date, it just goes to the next meeting unless you want to identify a specific date.
I think our next meeting would be appropriate, right? Okay. All right, moving on. Mayor and council reports. Any council member have a report they'd like to share?
No, they do.
Oh.
You need to call the question, Mayor. You do need to vote.
You said no debate. Okay, so I apologize. We do need a vote on that, that motion to table item number 26. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion non-debatable and passes. All right, back to council reports. Anybody? Councilmember Watson Curry.
Thank you. I simply just wanted to share that I was able to help, along with a couple other council members and members of our Human Rights Commission, a booth at Pride in the Park at Island Park in Fargo on Saturday. It was a lot cooler this year. Last year, everyone was kind of melting, so it was a beautiful time. It was really a well-attended event, multi-generational, folks from all across the region, and so I just wanted to extend my thanks to the commission members who pulled together the temporary tattoos and the flyers, and it looked really great, and it was fun to be a part of a small part of that celebration. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Councilmember Watson Curry. Anybody else? Councilmember White?
Sure. I have a couple of things. One is I was at our Clay County Collaborative meeting, and we were debriefing on the longest table event, and we have some really good data that we gathered at that event. We had questions that we prompted people with, and conversations about what people love about the area and things they'd like to see happening in our community. And so Carolyn Strand, who's the chair of that committee, has asked if we could do a presentation at the council meeting. So I'll be talking with the city manager about that to see if that's something we could possibly do in the future. I'm sure, like most of you, I attended Night to Unite, and I just wanted to take a minute to thank our law enforcement and our firefighters. And, you can see the excitement, I say, particularly with the kids when they get to meet those folks. And so we really appreciate them taking the time out of their busy schedules, taking time in the evening to spend time with our citizens. And I also want to thank all of the folks that organize those events, that, they're the glue that holds those neighborhoods together. And it is, one of my favorite nights that we have, and really a great event. And then you heard earlier from Cindy Gray about the Heartland Trail meeting, and we did have a really good meeting and our elected officials were there, and we put together a proposal for the next bonding bill, and it would include planning that would get us from into Clay County to Moorhead. So a lot of it was geared more towards constructing the stuff that has already been planned, but we made sure that there was they'd like to have a part of it in that would actually start getting us into that, linking us up to Moorhead. Thanks.
Any other reports? Councilmember Gertz.
Maybe not necessarily a report, but just an opportunity to thank the citizens of Ward 4 and the citizens of Moorhead for allowing me to represent them on this council. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time on the council. When I ran, there were 3 things that I we're passionate about, and that's economic development, permanent flood protection, and transparency in government. And I think that we've seen, a lot of, movement in those areas, and it certainly isn't because of me. It was because just a collaborative spirit of the councils that I've been able to serve on. And so partnerships are important, and I would encourage that the council continue to focus on the things that impact our citizens and in a positive way. And again, it's been a joy, and I would encourage anybody to, if they have that opportunity, to serve the community, whether it's on a board or commission or any area, because you learn a lot, you get a chance to meet other people and see different viewpoints. And I think that's what makes a council healthy and effective, is different viewpoints. And appreciate the time serving on this council. Chris gave me a gift that was from the executive leadership team and the council, and I want to thank you very much for that. It was a beautiful portrait of the community. And when we talk about our community, it's not just Moorhead, it's our community as a whole. And we have rivers and streets, boundaries that separate our communities, but truly effective communities when we come together and do things as a community to affect the greater good. So thank you again for the citizens of Moorhead for allowing me to serve, and it's been a true pleasure.
Thank you, thank you, Councilmember Gertz. You and I have served the longest up here, and you will be greatly missed. So thank you for your time. Councilmember Hendrickson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. I think I got that right. I want to thank Steve for his good work. He's been an excellent colleague for Ward 4. I think we've done a lot of good things in the last, how long you been on, Steve, 7?
It seems like 7.5.
Yeah. But I've been serving side by side with you for 6 years, so I appreciate the phone calls, all the advice with projects and any type of public works, and appreciate your leadership. The city has come a long way since you've been on the council. I sort of really appreciate it, and I'm going to miss you. So thanks.
Any other, Councilmember Carlson?
I just want to echo the sentiments. When I started, it was a very unique situation, being elected on a Tuesday and starting the following Monday. So I didn't get a lot of time to kind of ease my way in, should I say. And my first meeting with Councilmember Gertz was at the holiday parade, and he walked right over to me and welcomed me right to the council. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for being welcoming to new members of the council, welcoming to everybody in the city, and just for your service. I mean, it's a lot of time. People don't, I think, have an idea of how much time council members serve, and I know that you've been on committees that take up an immense amount of time, more so than other committees. So just on behalf of all of Moorhead, thank you so much. You'll be greatly missed.
Other council member? Okay, well, I have one report that I want to make real quick. The city is just in the early days of planning an inclusive playground for our city. We have met with a designer, a company in our area, and so we've kind of decided we are at the point where we can come up with a possible design committee as well as a fundraising committee. And as I volunteered to be on the design committee. As many of you know, I have a son who is in a chair. And so we went out to Mandan last week to check out an inclusive playground that they have. And it is in our inclusive playground is in our wish book. Phenomenal playground. My boys had a complete blast. It was packed with able-bodied kids and kids in chairs and braces and walkers. It was very, very cool. And I encourage other families who have physical needs themselves or their children to go out and explore some inclusive playgrounds and give us feedback so that we can make sure this park is phenomenal. We want this to be a regional attraction so that other people maybe from Mandan will come to Moorhead to check out our playground. So please, if you are a parent or if you have physical needs yourself, give us feedback on what you think should be involved and included in the inclusive playground. And speaking of our wish book, there is, I guess you can't see it, but there is a page on the back, or close to the back, that gives instructions on how to donate, because we are fundraising for this project. If you go to the website, cityofmoorhead.com/donate, you will see all of the wish list items there. If you would like to donate to the Inclusive Playground, just make sure you click on Inclusive Playground, and that money will be donated to that particular project. But that's all I wanted to share. They really, really are amazing playgrounds. City Manager, did you have any report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have one report. The affidavits of candidacy closed at 5 p.m. today. And so the results are, there are 12 folks that put in their notice that they are running for a special election, 5 for Ward 3 and 7 for Ward 4. And interesting, they are all males. So.
It is interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know what that means, if anything, but it's an interesting point, 12 people. So the special election is November 5th. The school board tonight is taking this up. We believe they're going to vote for their referendum to also be on the ballot. We will prepare the ballots with all those 12 candidates, and good luck to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any executive session tonight? Okay. So then I believe that takes us to the end. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Oh, any new business? I apologize. Seeing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
It's a motion by Councilmember Watson Curry. Second by Councilmember Dahlquist. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I don't think anybody would oppose. Okay. Meeting is adjourned.